Welcome to the Westcott Crochet channel and welcome to this retro style jacket. This is part 2 of 2. For part 1 I'm hoping there'll be a click box on screen about now, failing which there'll be a link in the description box. If you like what you see, let me know with the like button. If you want to see more, do please subscribe and hit the notification bell. For this project, any yarn recommending a 4mm hook will create a similar result. I used a 4.5mm hook, also a tape measure, stitch markers, and a yarn needle for a little bit of sewing and to weave in my ends. So here I am at the arm opening, ready to start a sleeve. I'm going to insert my hook into the bottom of this opening where I've seamed up the side, just at the top of that seam. I'm going to work a round of single crochet, but as well as putting stitches between the ridges, I'm going on top as well. So that's one in every row. Then here I've got regular stitches, so I'll just put one stitch in each. Over on this side I've got the back loops left from the thermal row, so I'll pick up the back loop and then just a neighbouring loop to get a good firm grip on that, all the way down, and then I'm back to the ridges. So I'm going to go on top of the ridge, between the ridge, top, in between, back to the beginning. Need to make sure I've got the same amount of stitches going down either side. So this is the front and this is the back. The stitch count needs to match and mirror each other. So on with my slip knot, pull that through, chain one, and on I go. So on top of the ridge and in between for the slope section. Then onto my regular stitches, one on top of each, back loops down the other side, and then slopes section to finish on top of the ridge and between the ridge. And I'll slip stitch into the chain one to close the round. So that's all the way around with the single crochet row, and I've slip stitched into the chain one to close, as mentioned. I've got 16 stitches going up the slope section. I've then got 13 going up to the shoulder, and then of course to match, 13 coming back down, 16 coming back to the beginning, as well as matching front and back of the arm opening. That also matches what went on the other sleeve. So yeah, just bear in mind, mirror front to back, but also make sure you've got two matching sleeves. I need to run some adjustments now on my stitch count to make sure my sleeve's not too wide. So I'm going to measure around the widest part of my arm, and then I'm going to add on a little bit extra because I don't want a tight sleeve, I want quite a loose fitting sleeve. Then I take my tape measure and I'm going to lay it on the back of my work. I'm going to work with just half my arm measurement because I don't need to do the full width, and it just means more measuring, more counting. So just lay my tape measure out on the back here, and I'm going to count how many ridges are within my measurement, my half sleeve measurement. So within my half sleeve measurement, I measured and counted 25 ridges. For every ridge, I'm going to need a stitch around my arm opening, so I'll need 25 stitches. So that's 25 going up the front and 25 going down the back. I'm going to leave these upright stitches untouched, so I'll keep my 13 as they are, which means that my reductions need to be worked within this sloping section. So working with my figures, I need 25 stitches per half sleeve. As I said, I'm keeping my 13 stitches from the upright section, so I need to take those out of the equation. 25 minus this 13 leaves me with 12 stitches. That 12 needs to match this slope section. I currently have 16. I need to lose 4. If If I divide 16 into 4, that tells me every fourth stitch needs to disappear. If I work 1 and 2 singularly, I then work 3 and 4 as a decrease. 1 and 2 on their own, 3 and 4 as a decrease. If I do that all the way up the slope, my 16 will become 12. On to the reductions. Just going to chain 1 to start the round, and then stitch 1 on its own, stitch 2 on its own, stitch 3 and 4 together as the decrease, and that gets rid of stitch number 4. I'll do that all the way up the slope, work my 13 stitches up to the top, 13 stitches back down to the second slope, and then the reductions on the other side, and that's going to amend my stitch count. So when I get back round to here, I'll be all set. That's all of my reductions or decreases, and my stitch count is correct. So I have 12, 13, 13 and 12, so 50 going all the way around. So the next thing I need to do is to work the length of my sleeve. So I'm going to make a chain which reaches from this underarm point here all the way down my arm. I'm going to leave 10 centimeters just to work these two sections here at the end of the sleeve. So I'm going to work 36 centimeters on this next section, which is 55 chains. I worked my chain. I also chained one at the end and came back with a row of single crochet. So the same way that I worked the bottom part of the jacket, I'm now just going to slip stitch into this base around the armhole. Exactly the same way as the bottom section of the jacket. Then I'm going to turn and come back with a row of back loop single crochet. At the end, I'll chain one and turn and come back with a thermal row. I'll be back at this point here. That's my thermal row. I'm now working flat on the inside, ridged on the outside. I'm going to slip stitch into the base of the arm opening, into the next stitch along, same as for the bottom of the jacket, but then we have a little change. I'm going to come back with a back loop row, and I'm going to be alternating from here just the same, back loop thermals, back loop thermal, but on every back loop row I'm going to put 2 stitches into the first stitch. So there's 1 and 2 to form an increase, and I'm going to do that on every back loop row after I've slip stitched into the base. Thermal rows come back as normal, and that's going to happen all the way up this one side of the sleeve till I get up to, for me, stitch number 25 at the top here. And that's where I am. I just slip stitched into my 25th stitch, add a little marker to tell me when to stop. So next I'm going to work decreases down this side to reverse the increases up here and mirror all the way down this side. I'm going to stop the last 2 stitches. I'm not going to do any further decrease until those last 2 stitches, because at the start I didn't increase. I did a single crochet row and a black loop single crochet row without any change to the stitch count, so I need to do the same thing over at this point. So I'll just orientate myself. So onto the back loop row, and I decrease into the first 2 stitches, work them together as one. and then 1 stitch in each, all the way down, chain 1 and turn back with a thermal row and slip stitch into the base, and then I come back with the back loop row and the decrease. I have 2 sides of a sleeve. The last 2 slip stitches worked without any change to the stitch count to match what I did on this side. Now I need to join them. I'm just going to show you how I join it with it right side out just to start with, just so it's easier to show you what I'm doing. So this is the start chain side, and I'm going to go right in, right next to this first ridge. So not the actual stitches, I'm just going to work my way in right next to the ridge, right up against it. And you can kind of see there are like little places to put your hook. I don't know if you can see, but you can when it's not on film. I can see. Whether you can on film, I don't know. So the same on the other side, right up next to the ridge. Again, I hope you can see. Right in through there. And what that does is, I can just show you on the other side, the finished sleeve. It gives me this as a finished seam. So you can see it's worked there on the inside. On the outside, it's invisible. I just need to turn myself inside out now so that I can work the seam on the wrong side. So I've turned myself inside out, ready to seam up. The ridged sides are facing each other, flat sides on the outside. So I'm going to have to keep taking a peek in on the inside to just locate my ridges. Make sure that I'm inserting my hook into the right spot each time. So find my spot in right next to the ridge. Same on the other side, right up next to the ridge. Yarn over and pull through a slip stitch. So right up again, little peek on the inside, check my location, in on this side, into the other side. I don't know if you notice, but I always slip stitch in 2 steps. Well, more often than not, I'll slip stitch in 2 stages to make sure that my slip stitches aren't pulled too tight. So I'll go through one and then the other loop, and it stops me from curving around, because if your slip stitches are too tight, you'll get a bowing in your sleeve seam, which you don't want. So feel my way along, making sure I'm getting right up in next to the ridge there each time, matching stitch for stitch all the way along. When I get to the end, I'll leave my yarn attached for the next stage. I'm all done with my seam. Here's how it looks. Full disclosure, even though I always try and match stitch for stitch all the way down, I do occasionally find that I appear to have fewer stitches on one side over the other. So I've obviously missed one at some point. I used to be a perfectionist and whip it all back out, but now, if it's just 1 or 2, I can make my peace with it. I'll usually just check about 2/3 of the way down, and if my stitch count proves to have gone off, I'll have a quick count up. I'll just correct it by matching the odd stitch twice from the side that's run short. So on the side where I have more stitches, I'll work each stitch once. Say I've run 2 short on the other side, I'll work those 2 stitches twice within that final third of the seam, obviously spaced apart. If you do have more than 2, I would say, yeah, probably whip it out and go again. But as you can see, 1 or 2 doesn't really show. No one's going to stop me in the street and point it out. So I make my peace with it and just move on. part 2 of the sleeve, I'm going to work a round of single crochet all the way around this edge, one stitch between each ridge. I've already chained one. I'm going to slip stitch into that chain one to close the round, but for now, one stitch in between each ridge all the way around. Just need to slip stitch to finish off that round, and then I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to mark that stitch just so it's easy to find when I come to close this next round. Now, heading in the exact same direction, I'm going to do a round of back loop single crochet. So all the way around. When I get back round to the start, I will slip stitch into the marked stitch. I close my round with the slip stitch. I'm going to chain one, start the next round, mark that stitch, and I'm going to turn and work back in the direction that I just came from. And I'm going to work back with a thermal round. And from here I'll be alternating between thermal and back loop rows, changing direction each time. The thermal is going to be worked on the outside, making it flat on the outside. The back loops will be worked on the inside, so that's going to be ridged on the inside. I'm going to do that for about 5 centimeters. I'll come back when I've worked my 5 centimeters. That's my 5 centimeters. I'm all ridged on the inside, flat on the outside. Next, I need to determine how wide I want the cuff, the next bit, to be. So I've measured around my wrist, decided how wide I want that to be, measured against my work. I need to get rid of 8 ridges around this bottom section. I have 48 stitches. I need to get rid of 8. 48 divided by 8 is 6. I need to work every 6th stitch along with every 5th stitch to get rid of it. I worked all of my reductions and then I chained out. To complete the length of my sleeve, I chained 6 plus 1 to turn. I single crocheted back up that chain and I slip stitched into the back 2 loops, remember from the waistband, so the back 2 loops of the cuff. I then came back with a back loop single crochet row, chained 1 and turned, back up with thermal, slip stitch into the base, and from there alternating, as always, working my way round. I've worked the whole of that wee section. I'm ridged on the outside, flat on the inside. I'm just going to turn this cuff inside out to seam it up. In exactly the same way as I did for the first part of the sleeve, I'm going in with my hook right next to the ridges on both sides. So not into the stitches, but next to the ridge as close as I can get without inserting it into the ridge itself. And slip stitching closed. I'll do my few stitches all the way to the end, chain up 1 and cut. I've already worked the second sleeve on the other side, so the next thing for me to do is a pocket. So pockets, I wanted my pocket to go from the waistband to just short of the bottom. I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches from the base, and I've lined up on this side with the second pipe on this side and then on the side of the jacket for the other side. I didn't want to go too far over because of the overlap. It would obscure the pocket. So the length, I chained 23, and this time instead of working into these top loops, I'm going to flip my chain over and work into the back loops, these little bumps. So not the first one, because that's my turning chain. So into the second loop from my hook and just single crochet as normal. The end of row 1 for the pocket, and now you can see I've got this nice double looped edge by working into the back bumps. So for row 2, I'm just going to work in standard single crochet, so in through both loops and single crochet. So I'll do this all the way down. I'll chain 1 and turn at the end and work all the way back. Again, just single crochet in through both loops. And I'm going to work that for 28 rows, which gives me the width of my pocket. There's my 28 rows. We'll sit this way, and it forms a square, which is what I was aiming for. So from here, where I've left off, I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to single crochet just along this edge. This is going to be the opening of the pocket, so I just want to reinforce that. So I'm going to put a single crochet at the top of each row all the way along. Here at the other side, I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to reverse single crochet around the whole outer edge, all 4 sides. Here at the bottom, I'll do as I did at the top and work single crochet at the end of each row, so 1 stitch at the end of every row. Just to remind you how this works, I'm going to spin around. I'm starting on the edge literally where I left off, so I've single crocheted along one side, starting down the other side, the next side. I go in through the first 2 loops in the reverse position, yarn over, pull through a loop back the way I came, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. I've worked my way down to this bottom corner here, just a couple more stitches to go. And I want to just round off the corners, so I'm going to skip that very corner stitch and just work now right into the bottom. So I have no stitches along this bottom edge, as I said before. I'm just going to put 1 at the end of each row. I know I'm making this stitch look quite difficult. It's actually quite difficult to film because I'm not sitting in my usual crochet position so I can film it. So I apologise, I'm making it look harder than it is. I can assure you it's not difficult, it's just difficult to film. So work all the way along the bottom. When I get to the corner again, I'm going to skip the corner stitch and work up the other side and do that all the way around until I've completed all 4 corners. Oh, sorry, all 4 sides. I've gone around all 4 sides with the reverse single crochet edging. Just to secure that now, I'm going to go back in through the first stitch and pull through a slip stitch, sorry. And I'm going to put in a second one just to be extra secure and slip stitch. Now I can pull that tight and cut my yarn. At this point it looks a little bit misshapen, but it'll stretch back out once it's attached. So now I need to create this section, the top flap section. The first square is the main part of the pocket and sits down here. The top flap just overlaps and sits on top here. So it's the same principle when I made this section. It's 10 stitches for the length, and then I worked rows to create the width. Where I worked 28 rows for the main pocket, I worked 30 for this top flap because I wanted a little bit of overlap on either side. So here it is, already finished. And same again, I went across this top section, top row, with a single crochet row, and then I have reverse single crocheted around the edges, but just 3 edges this time. I've left that top row just a single crochet row. To finish that off, chain 1 to secure, cut my yarn. I've left a long tail just to attach it. I'm starting with the flap. Firstly, I've put that into position where I want it to be. I've anchored this first corner down with a stitch marker so that it can't move about. Over here, I've actually inserted my needle already into where I'd marked for the other side. So I'm just going to sew across. I'm going in through for the flap just under the single crochet row here, directly underneath there, all the way along, so I get a nice straight line, and attaching it to the jacket just right under this waistband. And just make sure that I do attach it the same position the whole way along. Sorry, it's difficult to film again because I can't sit and hold it, so apologies for that. I'll struggle through. Just keep a nice even stitch, not too large, not too small, all the way along. I may come back with a second pass. I'm not sure yet. I'll see how well it attaches on the first pass. But I'll come back when I'm finished. I did end up making a second pass along the top here. I had a pretty long tail end that I'd left to attach it, so I just went back again to make sure it was good and secure. The pocket I've put into position. I've anchored it at all 4 corners with stitch markers to make sure that it doesn't move about while I'm attaching it. So position I've gone for is 1 ridge in from the flap and 2 stitches down. So the flap's just there, 1 ridge in, 2 stitches down. Same on the other side, 1 ridge in, 2 stitches down. I'm going to be sewing down between the 2 ridges, so I follow this ridge all the way down. The gap in between them is where my stitches are going to go. I need to make sure I don't pull it too tight as I'm doing it, otherwise it's going to end up in a completely different position. So maybe some more stitch markers if you feel like you're pulling too tight. So I'm going to grab my needle. For the pocket, I'm going in just after this reverse single crochet row. That's my guide on the pocket, all the way down there. And obviously, as I said, down between the 2 ridges on the jacket. For the bottom, I just pick a line of stitches and follow that line across. Again, down this side, in between the 2 ridges. So I'll attach on the 3 sides, not the 4th side, that's where my hand goes, and then I'm all done. All done, attached on 3 sides, 1 finished pocket. Actually I have 2 finished pockets, I've already done the one on the other side, I just had to make sure that they were both in exactly the same position. Next, for the belt loop. I've attached my yarn at the top of the waistband, just off the seam, the side seam. I'm going to make a chain that goes down to the bottom of the waistband. I'm going to chain 8. I've already chained one when I attached, so it's 2, 8. Just going to spin around and attach at the bottom of that row. Insert my hook through a few loops just along this bottom line of the waistband. Make sure I get a good purchase on there, so a couple of loops at least, and pull through a slip stitch. Then I'm going to work my way back down this chain with a single crochet. Then I'm going to attach it again with a slip stitch at the other end. There's my single crochet row on the belt loop. I'm just going to slip stitch into the top here. I'm going to go for the spot next to the last slip stitch, in through there, and slip stitch. Pull that nice and tight, and then I'm going to work my way back down with a thermal row. Last row is a slip stitch row. I've inserted my hook through all 3 open loops, so I have 4 loops on my hook, including that initial loop, and slip stitch through all 4 loops. I'll work this slip stitch row to the end, then I'll slip stitch into the top of the waistband, then I can chain 1 and cut my yarn. Two matching belt loops need to have a belt. Here's mine. I'll show you how I worked this next. So here I have my belt. It measures 140 centimeters, and I've tapered both ends. This is a thermal stitch front and back, and working from the longest side, the pointy end, it's a really long chain. It was 185 chains, but then again, it's not too many rows. It's not particularly thick, so it's not so bad. I'm going to show you how I did this on a heavily truncated version, because you don't need to see the working of all of these bits. This bit is important, the tapering, but the rest of it is just a lot of repetition. So let's pretend I just made a really long chain of 185, and here it is. I chained an extra one to turn, and I came back with a row of single crochet. I then chained again to turn and worked back with a row of thermal single crochet, and that's where I am here. For this next row, I'm going to chain 1 to turn again, and I'm going to work the first 2 thermal stitches together as a decrease. So in through the first, in through the second, and yarn over and finish the stitches. Then just 1 stitch in each stitch all the way down until the last 2, which I'll also work together to decrease. Here I'm at the end, decreasing into the last 2 stitches. So insert, pull up a loop, insert into the next one, and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through everything to decrease. chain 1 to turn, and now I'm going to decrease into the next 2 stitches, the first 2 stitches, but because I've just decreased in the last row, I've got an extra loop for the back. So I'm going to ignore that extra back loop, the first loop, and I'm going to start from the second back loop for my thermal stitch. So insert into that first stitch, pull up a loop, into the next one, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through everything. And then I'll do that 1 stitch in each the whole way down, decrease into the last 2. Here at the end again, 2 stitches to work together. I have the spare back loop right at the end here, which I'm going to ignore. So just working the 2 stitches together and leaving that extra back loop unworked. Then I'll chain 1 and turn. Again, I'm going to work the 2 stitches together, again ignoring that loop. So that's the back loop that I'm leaving empty. Work those 2 stitches together, work all the way to the end, work 2 stitches together at the other end, ignoring the back loop that's right at the end. I'll keep doing this row over and over until I get the width that I want for my belt. I'll let you know how many rows and the width when I come back. I worked my belt for a total of 9 rows, so the 2 initial rows and then 7 rows of decreases. It measures, I think, 4 centimeters. I'll just check. Yep, 4 centimeters. Last thing I need to do here is the slip stitch row to close off the thermal loops. So in through all 3 loops, yarn over and pull through everything. I'll slip stitch the entire row, at the end, chain 1 and cut. As one extra job, I've opted to reverse single crochet around the entire outer edge of my jacket. It's not necessary, of course, but I feel like it gives it a nice edge and possibly makes it a little more hard wearing. I don't know. Also, I had a bunch of yarn left, so why not? So here I'm just working the regular stitches. As I approach the waistband here, I'll just put one at the end of each row and just make sure I evenly space them out. Back here I've got stitches. So I'm just going to work my way all the way around the outer edge and then I'm done. If you work your way through the whole of part 1 and the whole of part 2, you'll have one of these. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do subscribe if you want to see more. A huge thank you to those who already have, and to everyone, thank you so much for watching today.